Welcome back, everybody. We are on the game development live stream where we talk to an industry audience, you game designers, game developers, CTOs, studio heads, everybody who's working in the industry. This is your live stream. There's nothing else like it out there. There's plenty for gamers, there's plenty for investors even, but this is for you, people working in the industry. And today we are talking about indie game development. We don't actually know what this term indie game development means, by the way. So maybe we will even try to go there. I know that that's a perennial topic. But I wanted to bring in a couple of friends who I've known in the industry for years. One of them for an awfully long time. We'll have to broach that as well. But I want to introduce first Renee Gittins.
Hi. It's a pleasure to be here. Super excited to chat with everyone. As noted, my name is Renee Gittins. I am the studio head of my own studio, Stumbling Cat. We just launched Potions: A Curious Tale last year on PC, and I'm currently working on the console ports as well as some additional endgame content. I also volunteer for the IGDA and do a lot to uplift other game developers.
Thanks, Renee. And Ichiro, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I've been in the industry for about 30 years at this point. I co-founded the company that became Sony Online Denver and an award-winning indie studio, Dejabon Games. Let's see, over at Valve, I helped establish something called Steam Labs to improve discovery on the platform. And now I am CEO of Totally Human Media, whose goal is to solve the game discovery problem.
All right, game discovery, a huge central issue for any game developer, but independent developers specifically, because you got to get known for your game to be played and purchased. But I am John Radoff. I'm CEO of Beamable. We're a gaming infrastructure company. We help you get your game online and make it super easy. I am joined by my co-host, Paul. Paul, welcome back again.
Howdy, I'm Paul. I'm creative director at King. Recently bought by Microsoft, so I guess I technically work for Microsoft now, but my views are my own. So I guess I'm the big corporate representation here. I've always worked on very large game design teams at places like Zynga, Electronic Arts, and stuff like that. So I'm the voice of industry. All
right, and we are joined by our intrepid producer, Oscar. Oscar is the one who makes all of this look easy so that I just talk the whole time. And I can't tell you how valuable that is. Thank you, Oscar. You're muted. You see how hard it is to control things for yourself? That's what I would be like literally the whole time. I would be doing that to myself.
I give up. Background music, be damned.
Relatable.
All right. So as usual, because this is an open forum, I just wanted to reintroduce people to the way we do this live stream, which is, yes, we have guests here. We're talking amongst each other, but this conversation is for you to join in. So if you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X, any of those places that we are streaming to, of course, post your comments and we will surface those comments, bring them right into the conversation. But you can even go a step beyond that. If you want to be part of this conversation today, let us know in those comments. Oscar will get you a StreamYard link. You can join in and be live. All you need is a camera and a mic, and you can be here with the rest of us. If you have anything pertinent to the conversation today or something that's come up in the last week, of course, we want to talk to you. This is like the hallway conversation at GDC, probably something many of us are going to be doing next week, but we have that hallway conversation every week. That is the whole idea of the game development live stream. Okay. Ichiro, you mentioned discovery. I totally want to get back to that subject, but we got to talk a little bit about just the journey into this industry. I just have to, I have to do a little bit of a reveal here. Ichiro, I think we both decided to go into the game industry at the same time. And what grade were we in?
What grade were we in 40 years ago? I was in fourth grade.
I don't know what grade you were in.
We look good. Yeah.
So you were on a rock, if I remember. And
I was sitting on a rock with a piece of pad of paper, sketching out a video game, and you're like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
So we convinced each other to join the game industry, which most of the time has been the best decision that I've made in my life. So that's worked out pretty well. It's the place where there's so much creativity and a lot of challenge for sure. Renee, how did you get into the industry? Was it in 5th grade or?
Ooh, yeah, honestly, it should have been, but I fear it wasn't. No, in 5th grade, I was, what was I doing? I was playing a lot of Half-Life, actually, a little younger. I started out as a huge first-person shooter gamer, actually. So Wolfenstein 3D was my first game ever.
Okay.
But, eventually I started playing Pokemon and things that were a little bit more popular with my peers. Unfortunately, while math was my favorite subject, I didn't learn about programming until college. And I didn't learn that I could be a game developer, like really understand that until my senior year of college. So I actually got my degree in engineering with a focus in mechanical engineering and started my career as a biomechanical engineer in biotech. So I taught myself programming and then broke into the games industry, being motivated, having met game developers and realized that it was a potential path for me and that I could work on the things I love so much. Because even prior to that, I was a big cosplayer. I wrote League of Legends guides. I was very active within like the game community fandom. I just didn't realize I could use all of my technical art, project management skills to make it a career.
And now you've launched your game. So tell us about that journey and just share your game. Like we're all here to promote our projects, by the way. Like, it's a friendly audience. It's the industry. So don't hold back. So, like launch your game, relaunch it again right here.
Yeah. So Potions, A Curious Tale is an adventure crafting game where you play as a young witch named Luna and where combat's not always the answer. So Luna discovered her ability to brew magical potions, and she can use those potions as spells to battle monsters, solve puzzles, and overcome other obstacles on her quest to become a potions master. And it's actually based on fairy tale and folklore from around the world. You get your adorable cat companion named Helios, and you'll notice that the gameplay sort of feels reminiscent of old school adventure games, but with much more of a focus on combat strategy, where you're using monsters against each other, where you're using the environment against monsters. Because, I mean, ultimately, she's still a 12-year-old girl. She can save the world, and she is quite badass. But, she's not going to be picking up a great sword and taking a dragon head on, even if she does take a dragon head on in other ways. So
awesome. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. This actually started out as a purely portfolio piece. I was just looking to build out a portfolio as I was switching from biotech to the games industry. I know that's super important for multiple roles. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a producer, an engineer, or a game designer. I hadn't designed a game before. So I drafted out a little game based on my frustration that heroes are often rewarded for slaughtering every fluffy bunny they see, which doesn't feel very heroic. I didn't want to put in a system that was like karma based. I wanted it to be part of the game mechanics, to not want to just go slaughter everything. And the easiest way I thought to create that was to have combat have a cost. So that's why it's based on potions, because you have to gather the ingredients and craft those potions. And it's also why figuring out how to defeat things without using your potions is a really important strategy to not waste resources.
Very cool. And let's talk about the development journey itself. So how long, how many people worked on it? This is like a AAA, like 2,000 people.
Yeah, so I am a scrappy game developer. I will say that. I was able to kickstart this game and I raised $65,000, which, as you might figure, is actually not enough to pay yourself to develop a game, particularly of this size. So I was able to use those funds to contract some art and audio help mostly. And then I actually put in a bunch of personal funds over the years to finish the game development. So I was not able to pay myself for the development of this. So I actually was moonlighting, working on potions while building my career in the games industry. So it took me 9.5 years to get to ship. I could have shipped it earlier, but it wouldn't have been the game I dreamed of. I would have cut some features. I didn't have a publisher to tell me that I had to ship on time. I did have some Kickstarter backers who would probably wish that I had gotten out earlier. But I was able to fully execute on my vision over those 9.5 years and learned a lot along the way. Like I said, this was my sort of first big portfolio piece. I had done some really minor games like Ultimate Tic-Tac-Toe before this. But instead I decided to make a story-based, crafting-based, puzzle-based, multi-biome, it's 46 levels, 8 boss monsters, monolith of a game. And ultimately, I'm very happy with where it's landed. It's very highly reviewed on Steam. I think we have 90% positive rating, and we've just passed 15,000 units of sales.
Nice. And you coded it?
Yeah, I would say I probably did about 95 to 98% of the programming in the game. I did get some help.
We'll round that to 100%, but okay.
No, I definitely got help with some of the controller integration and localization.
Okay, fair enough. And you designed it, and
I did design it.
Art.
I did not do art. Technically, there's like these little soot sprites in there. I created those. They're a 2-frame sprite, one with their eyes open, one with their eyes closed. So that's my art contribution. Art and audio is not within my realm of expertise. So those are, I integrated both, but I did not create them.
So I get you there. All right, and Ichiro, you've shipped a few games in your life. I think the first game you shipped, the one that we worked on together. I was 14. It was called Final Frontier.
It must have been. That was in 1988. We did.
Don't say those years.
Sorry, it was in the 1800s back when we had. Bulletin board systems doors games back when like having 12 people, 20 people playing was a big thing.
Yeah, and since then, what are some of the favorite projects you've worked on?
Oh, let's see. I mean, I've worked on literally dozens of projects. I think the one that that was the most fun, I'll say that like I have a Guinness World Record for breaking Steam because of our base jumping game, which about 15 years ago called 25 letter A's in a row, and it kept literally breaking Steam. Right, the front was too many letters. Salieri. They kept shortening the name. I kept lengthening the name, and they're like, "Please don't do that. We'll fix Steam so that it doesn't break." Although years later, they did hire me to help fix, to improve Steam. So I don't think they held it against me.
Okay, so I want to remind again, quick station identification. We've got over 100 people in the live audience. We have been getting a lot more viewers recently. Thank you for everybody who's joining the audience here. I mean, in the last 10 days, it's been insane. I went from about 15,000 followers on Twitter to I've got almost 200,000 now. So we're getting a lot of people watching this programming, and it's really a delight for me that I can take that audience that I've built and just share this knowledge back to the industry and have folks like Renee and Ichiro on. So I want to remind you, this isn't just me talking to fill the time. I can do that. I'm good at it. Paul's good at it. We can all keep the conversation going, but we really, really love it. Like our true moment of joy is when you join the conversation. So post your comments on whichever social platform you're viewing this on, or if you're bold enough and you've got a camera, join us. We'll bring you right onto the channel and we can hear from you as well. So yeah, William, join up. What are you waiting for? Oscar will get you the StreamYard link. Come on in. That's the whole point here. So you'll see this actually happen in real time.
I kind of feel like if you don't have a supervillain origin story, you're not doing it right.
Well, I think you get a sense from those two stories, though, that like this is an industry in which perseverance pays off an awful lot. And making games is super hard, and it is a craft. It takes time to develop that craft. And I just admire anybody who's stuck with it along the whole way. I've done the same thing myself, although I'm now working more on the infrastructure side of the game industry, helping to equip people to build their dream game. Go ahead, Renee.
I was going to say, at one point in my career, after the successful Kickstarter, I was working on potions and then doing contract work as the marketing coordinator for Xbox Games with Gold, a freelance games journalist, and as a technical producer for a work-for-hire indie studio at the same time, juggling all the balls.
So slacking mostly. You're just slacking off from.
Oh, completely.
Can totally respect that.
So we raised a few things in the conversation so far, just from those origin stories. So the perseverance aspect, of course, but then the specific challenges of building and launching an independently developed game. So funding is part of it. Renee, you talked a little bit about your experience with Kickstarter. Interestingly enough, a theme recently in this channel. So we had Raf Koster on a couple of weeks back, and Raf talked to us about his game, which has gotten a lot of outside funding, but they just launched a Kickstarter, hit its goals within like 1 hour or something of launching. Seems like Kickstarter is, it kind of went through this dark age where a lot of projects were not getting created and people are getting angry at it. But it seems like maybe it's making a little bit of a comeback these days. I'd be curious if anybody has perspective on that. But in addition to that, we just talked about the discovery problem. So I want to come to that too, because it's one thing to fund and build the game, but there's nothing worse than building a game and putting all that effort and energy in, and then people don't find out that they should play it or that it's the right game for them. Ichiro, you have been working on this problem for a while. It's your new startup. It's what you were doing when you were working with Valve on the Steam platform, Discovery Algorithms. Renee, you lived this yourself, having launched a game. I'd actually love Renee to start with this, just so that we can frame the problem a little bit. Renee, how easy is it to stand out as an independent game developer?
Oh, it's so hard. Yeah. There's hundreds of games come out every day on Steam. And so the only way that you can succeed is stacking all the cards in your favor. There's so many of those, like trying to get 7,000 to 10,000 wish lists before launch so you can be on popular upcoming and aim for getting on the Steam front page for new and trending. But getting those eyes on your game requires a lot of effort. And I don't feel like all indie developers fully recognize how much you need a giant marketing plan with a lot of execution. For me, I started aggressively marketing 6 months before launch and did a lot to really hammer in on that across all platforms where I could find my target audience. And I was able to find success mostly with TikTok. But it took a lot of effort. About half my time those last 6 months was spent doing some sort of marketing preparation. Well, it was probably the only reason that I was able to get the success that I found.
Renee,
Stricker says game discovery. He says equal as if it's a comparison operator, but we get where you're coming from, Trevor. It's you're trying to say assignment, and it's a crying emoji.
Am I muted?
Is that true?
Yeah,
well,
you're on.
Typing coming in initially, so I muted you just so we didn't hear typing coming over the channel. But,
okay. Well, on Kickstarter, I think what happened there is board games always seem to be succeeding on Kickstarter. Am I wrong on that? Paper games, they
board
were doing
games
okay.
have done really well on Kickstarter. Yeah, well, I mean, paper-based games, physical games, I think have had relatively maybe proportionately more success.
So on top of my big screen, I have a little sticker from when I was running the Shiba Eternity game. It says, Star Citizen, never forget. I contend that Star Citizen poisoned the well on Kickstarter for quite some time. Everyone knew about it. Everyone was pissed off about it. Just my opinion. Could be wrong.
I feel like the well was kind of poisoned before that.
Well, yeah, there were a couple of others like that. Yes.
So I funded on Kickstarter in 2016, and that was well after the heyday of Kickstarter. I feel like Kickstarter in 2012 was a lot healthier for video games, but there was a lot of people who were just pitching ideas who didn't know about the execution of game development. And with the board game, it's a lot easier to create a physical prototype and to work with a printer creator to get that made. With video games, obviously we know that software development is challenging, and making software fun, like games, can be all sorts of additional problems, even outside of just the technical aspects. And so I think that there were people who were selling visions who didn't have the ability to execute on that. And then people started quickly realizing that they had to be a little bit more discerning with who they were supporting. And so that's where I think we saw an initial fall off. There was a lot of people who were less experienced trying to get their games funded, and people felt burnt by that and stopped supporting.
I'm tempted to do a paper version of my movie trivia game and make it into a Kickstarter project. I actually printed up like does it show up? I don't know. It doesn't show up. But I printed up like paper version of the game as a thing I send out to possible partners to actually take the game. That's a frustrating experience. One thing that can happen to you if you don't have a lot of funding for marketing and you rely on some sort of partnership, sometimes the partners just have problems. It's not their fault. It's not your fault. So I have a partnership with a movie review site that gets about 5 million people every month. And they went through a major website revision. And frankly, I think they got ripped off. They were running from Ruby on Rails to WordPress, and the process went really bad for them.
My goodness, who moves from Ruby to WordPress?
This is a famous site. I'm not going to name them because they're major. And I don't want to, badmouth them. But, as far as going to everyone else, IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes and all that, it's like knocking on, like banging your head against a brick wall. It's very hard to get to those deals. It's extremely hard.
You got to have something real, like Renee was saying.
I have the game. The game's out. It's done.
Well, yeah. I mean, Renee was saying that like board games are probably doing better because there's a tangible object on the deliverable. I think that rings very true to me. When Raph was on a few weeks back, we just flashed his Kickstarter up there, but Raph's Kickstarter wasn't, I need money to make my game. What Raph's Kickstarter was, I already have a game and we've got all these people playing it. And, he ran that Kickstarter as a like we were saying.
Well, so we did this, you just posted Pop Cannibal up there. And we did a game with Pop Cannibal 10 years ago. And we had already finished the game and we wanted to, we got a good amount of money for it, but we also used it as a marketing beat. I don't know if you can do that if you're not Raph Koster these days. I mean, like he has like my goodness, if you think about who's a better designer than he is.
He's got some street cred.
I mean, he totally does. I wonder. I would love to hear that it's coming back as a way to sort of buoy video game developers, but I wonder if it's just, is it the superstars and only them?
I think it works good for pre-orders. I just think that, at least for my own Kickstarter, there was so much upfront effort to get relatively polished art just for the Kickstarter that it kind of inhibited development because we were finalizing some art far earlier than we should have. And so a lot of those assets had to be completely remade. And so if you can self-fund, do work for hire, get external investment, whatever it is, and use maybe a crowdfunding like Kickstarter at the end as pre-sales, I think that's going to be a lot easier because you're already going to have all those assets created. People can be assured that they're going to get the product that you've promised them. And it'll probably be much easier to use just sort of a hype tool.
I will say it's not easy for anybody. There's people raising some money, and if anyone could take solace in anything, it's that if you're struggling to get funding, you're not alone. Everybody's struggling, including people that Ichiro just described as superstars. Like Raph raised some money a few years back when money was flowing for a lot of game projects. And like a lot of games kind of in mid or late stage development, I can't speak for Raph, but I don't think it was a slam dunk to then add on a whole bunch more capital to get the game to the point of completion. So they had to get super disciplined. I think the Kickstarter is helping materially in terms of just making clear that there's an audience for the kind of game he's creating. And yeah, Raph is doing really interesting new things, and he's got a legendary background. You'd think that is the person where just giant sized checks get handed out continuously from all the big publishers and VCs of the world. And it actually just is not that way. And I myself just closed a round for Beamable. Now we're a little different because we are development platform for games.
Your picks and shovels. Yeah. It's a big difference.
But it's not, but the point is, I think a lot of people have that grass is greener view of, oh, I was a game developer. If only I just went into development tools. The VCs love that. And let's start flowing in. And
You got to
it's
be
not
real.
true. It's not true. It took me, really, it took me the last 2 or 3 years to raise the Series A, because there was a period of time there where there just was no money out there and you just had to survive. So we had to scale back and just survive through that. And then money kind of a little bit came back last year, but it was super selective, really high bar. You had to have a million conversations. We did eventually close a $13.5 million Series A just recently, but it wasn't easy. I mean, what you're seeing is the end result of 2 or 3 years of effort to even get to that point. So
I
nothing is easy for anybody. So just be prepared that the perseverance is what pays off. And you may have to do what Renee did and take a long time to build your game. And I mean, I think that's just the reality of games. It's just really hard and it's really competitive. And there were 19,000 games in Steam last year.
I won a venture competition in November. We have a blockchain game company, right? And people said to me at the event, I want to fund you. Doesn't mean you're going to get funding. Just because people say that doesn't mean you're going to get funding. So what finally happened was we stumbled upon a project we could afford to do, prediction game. And we got people who want to work on it who are basically forestalling payment for the game to be released because they believe in the game. I have not been in this position for a long time, and it's scary a little bit, but I think this is one of these things where, I'm reminded of Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, where he says at the point, sometimes X does mark the spot. In this case, I've never believed that an idea alone was going to be good enough to actually succeed because it's such a good idea. But in this case, I do. Sherry Kuno came up with the brilliant idea. So I stayed on, as CEO, even though we have very little funding. We got a little bit of funding. Raising money is much harder than people realize. I've done it a couple times. I've gotten real funding, and then you got to be really careful when you do get funding, because in the mid 2000s, I raised millions of dollars for a mobile game company, and what happened was the people who invested in it put in people into the company that pretty much ruined it. So that's another worry you have. If the investors say, okay, you need to have this guy as CXO of some kind, and then you find out that he's a disaster, that can ruin everything. So
So I think for we were talking about indie games earlier. So first of all, indie games, generally speaking, are be funded on a project basis, right? You're going to get a fund, or you're going to get a couple of publishers.
If you're lucky.
If you're fair enough. And only recently have I heard of increasing interest in equity-based funding for indie studios. But to John's point, there have been studios going out of business, Firehose recently here in Boston, because the project funding that was, it wasn't easy, but it was possible 3 years ago has just really dried up. So I think, what are the causes of that? I would say discovery, right? Discovery is my answer to everything. But my goodness, how do you even fund a game if you're a small team now?
All right, let's talk about discovery. Ichiro, what's broken about Steam?
So nothing's broken about Steam. Steam is great. Here's the contentious thing that I'm going to lay on everybody listening here. You all know the sales funnel, right? The concept of the buyer's journey, or, however you want to put it. Customers go into a funnel, weird metaphor, into the top because they hear about a game and then, I hear about Renee's game. That sounds interesting. They come back. If they're interested, they get into the middle of the funnel and they read articles, they watch Let's Plays, talk to people about it. And then bottom of funnel, right? Point of sale. That is Steam. You hit the button, you buy it, boom. Steam, eShop, App Store, Google Play are all bottom of funnel points of sale, and some of them masquerade as top of funnel. Not because they're bad, but because they sort of have to. So I worked on Steam Labs for a while there, and I increasingly learned that those platforms just really don't want to be the awareness of things. So my contention is really that the ecosystem is broken because there's really no way to segment an audience and target a customer that you, with whatever game you want to reach, efficiently. So top of funnel's broken.
Okay. And we love Steam and everything it's done for the industry. Gabe Newell, we'd love to have you on the program. Join us.
He's on a yacht somewhere.
I know you're watching right now. We're going to tag you. We're going to
We
tag
love
you.
you, Zeus. We love you, Zeus.
You know,
Renee, what's wrong with Steam?
honestly, I think Steam's great.
Okay.
It is so hard. The fact that you can sort of awaken traction on Steam by getting an influx of people is wonderful discoverability. You basically, anytime you see a marketing success, Steam amplifies it greater because it sees the interest in your game and pushes it to more people. So I think that Steam actually does quite a good job with that. I will say that like I approached marketing the wrong way when I was starting as an indie developer on Potions because I was very inexperienced. I was very bashful about that. And so I was always trying to talk as Stumbling Cat the company instead of Renee Gittins, the indie developer. And that didn't work as well. People are a lot colder towards companies. People are a lot less supportive of companies. Nobody wants to be talking to this sort of disembodied corporation. And so when I swapped to just talking as like Renee, the very interested, like passionate, excited developer, I got a lot more traction and marketing became a lot easier. And particularly with like the target audience I'm going for right now, which is like between like 10 and 25 usually in terms of years of age, they are looking for authenticity in interaction, and they tend to be very sensitive towards anything that they feel is marketing. So my trailers, my like gameplay clips, things like that don't do nearly as well as me talking to a camera about why I'm passionate about my game and why I hope that you check it out too. And that's where I found all of the virality in the marketing that I did within the last like 3 years.
I think you're really good at that. And it speaks to the, my contention is that these days, probably not like a hugely contentious contention, discovery happens largely as a byproduct of entertainment, right? You got folks today, they watch, Switch, they watch Twitter, they go to Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, and it's like these things they consume to be entertained, and they learn about new things that way. And it's not like I need to go out and I need to buy a game about potions, right? You never go out there. And that is why Renee, who's like, you watch Renee's stuff and you're like, oh man, this is a really great way to spend an hour. And I think that is why that talking head works better than, here's a marketing video about this trailer. But it's also tricky for a few reasons. And one, like not every developer is going to be that personality. And two, for Renee, if you decide to do a game about mechanical engineering, your audience may not follow you, right? Because they're here, they're here for Renee talking about this sort of cozy stuff. And then where the ecosystem breaks down is that, switch to another thing. What do? You have to build it up again.
Are you kidding? Have you seen Goldie Blocks?
Okay, fair enough.
So yeah. So my whole acquisition now for the stick figure movie trivia game is based on Reddit groups like Film, where every day I post the image of the movie of the day. And it's amazing. Yesterday was like the Clerks, right? So there's an image of Dante, a stick figure drawing of Dante at the counter. Huge response, right? And finally I realized, Bill, you have to use the smart link that directs them either to the website or to the app store of their device in order to get downloads. And yeah, it works. I mean, I had screwed up before, but now it does. So if I go to like Reddit and I look at the post, I can see the impressions and stuff. It's like, yesterday was thousands of views. It was 23,000 views yesterday on the post with Clerks. It translates to a small amount of downloads, but it's more than anything else. And I'm not paying for them. Anyone can go out on a corner and hand out $20 bills for $5 a pop. And a lot of people do when they launch products on the app stores. They basically spend a lot of money on acquisition, advertising, and quite often the ROI isn't there. Part of that is because of the bidding system. The ads are priced based on what people are willing to pay to run those ads. And you've got companies that are got their monetization king for one, right? Paul, you guys did a masterful job. So you guys have monetization down pat. You can afford to pay more for your users.
Yeah, I mean,
but a lot of indie people can't.
Any big team is going to get more from a player than an indie is. Like that's why it's inherently unfair. Like what a big optimized game with a team of PMs is going to extract from a given player, even on a pound for pound basis, is worth more, and therefore they're willing to pay more. I don't think that's just a King thing. That's an every big team thing, right?
Like for the crypto prediction game we're working on at the other company, the whole deal is based on the fact that they cut a deal with in negotiations with a mobile carrier that has 55 million subscribers and is giving everyone wallets, and the games that are out there on that device are getting 20 to 25,000 DAU. So like, okay, build the game, launch it. That'll work because we have the marketing channel. Without the marketing channel, you're crazy. And the whole reason I did a very light web version of the stick figure game, and I approached a couple of movie review sites. One responded extremely positively. So I poured money into making sure it was available in the app stores and had the right monetization and everything else. And they are stalled for literally 8 months. That's a bad situation. I do not appreciate being in that situation. But what choice do I have? So I can't just dump the game. So I have to find clever, non-spend ways of promoting stuff. And I think for a lot of indie people, that's a necessity. And
earlier Renee was saying how she did actually get a good result when she went on TikTok. I was curious when she said that, like was that before or after people were able to sort of mark and wish list your game on Steam? Because maybe that's what Steam's job is like you go out and do the hard work, the top of funnel hard work, and then Steam provides that sort of sticky substance where they go and they get locked in, right?
Yeah, so I think the biggest benefit of Steam is that it is no cost to anyone to wishlist your game.
Exactly.
But when you launch your game or discount your game for 20% or more, Steam emails those people. Now, I know that for a while, everybody thinks of email as spam, but I would say that email reach outs are the most effective reach out because all social media is algorithm based. I have 55,000 followers on TikTok. And if I post a random video, I might get 700 views unless it really pops off. So that means that there is a fraction of my audience who sees any of the content I create unless it goes viral. Thus, that's where Steam is beautiful because it's a very low lift for people to wishlist your game. It's a good reason to have your Steam page up early, as long as it's polished when you put it up there, and to send people there with the call to action, wishlist my game, because Steam will give them the calls to action to buy your game when it's available.
That's kind of my point.
How do you win at TikTok as a game developer?
How do you win?
I want to know how you win at TikTok as a game developer.
TikTok's easy, but it's like all marketing. You are screaming into the void. The way that I approach TikTok is I note that you need to have no spaces in your video. You need to have something very compelling. If not in the first 3 seconds, in the first second and a half. So the first TikTok I had that went viral was I said, I've been working on the same game for 9.5 years.
Well, that's such a great hook, right?
And people are like, but why? What? Working on the same game? What does that mean? And so they keep listening. And I think I got like a 1.5 million views on that one. Wow. And then my super viral video, which could totally be a whole nother discussion, got 16 million views.
But it's so hard to get those people, like you're saying, that like, I think the lesson that we'd want people to learn and that what you want to teach is that once you get those people, by God, you got to hang on to them, right? You got to make sure you don't lose them, right?
Well, yeah. And so like one of the challenges with TikTok is you can't put links easily. So you have to put a very tempting call to action. And I still have never seen a 1% conversion rate on TikTok.
I agree.
Right. So like, yeah, you get 1 million views. That's great. If your conversion rate's 0.1, it's still great. But it's pretty rough. But it's certainly very useful because it goes viral hard when it does go viral. And I will batch record TikToks. Like after this call, I'm wearing makeup and I look fine. I'm going to record like 20 TikToks and then I'm going to pick my best ones and release them slowly over the next 2 weeks because I don't have it in me to record a TikTok every day. That's exhausting.
People do though. People do who, and all that. So I have a crazy Steam story. I was brought into a company to run the game studio called Rocket in 2020, and I found out that it already spent hundreds of $1,000s on a puzzle platformer for Steam. And I
Hey,
guess
that
they
works
missed,
well if you're Animal Well, right?
they missed a whole article about the indie apocalypse. This was a clever game where you were a piece of fabric, if you can imagine that. And so, what are we going to do? They had no marketing budget. They were like crazy. Well, we needed a narrator. So I found this, and this was during COVID, and getting someone into a studio to do narration, and we wanted a British narrator, was really a pain in the ass. So somehow I ended up connecting to a guy named Rufus Hound, who had a TV show on BBC and had over 1 million followers, got him to be the narrator and got him to promote it on his Twitter account with over 1 million followers. So it meant something. I don't know where this ended up because that whole thing tumbled to a halt, but the game is out there. It's called Where's Samantha or something like that. And, it's a cute game, beautiful game, but yes, wrong. This leads to a good point about indies. Don't do something without doing some research about what's out there or what's happened in that segment, because launching a game in a segment that's overcrowded and has had some problems is really crazy. Don't do that to yourself.
So I want to say something angry and at the same time maybe aspirational. It used to be that you could launch a puzzle platformer and gain traction and get some sales. And obviously, if you're not Animal Well right now in 2025, you can't do that. There was that Convoy report from last year, if you all saw that. Basically, it said the number of games that are making the most money on Steam, at least, we'll talk desktop, is decreasing year over year. So it was something like, the top 10 games made 61% of sales of any new games in 2023 or whatever it is, and that is the sharpest divide between the top games and everyone else that has ever existed on desktop. So I think first of all, the reason for that, I would argue, is that social media and games media tends to like mass market stories. So if you look onto IGN or Polygon or what have you, you get a bunch of stories about Grand Theft Auto 8 or what have you. And then there's no segmentation of the market when it comes to discovery, and awareness. So if you like hidden object cat games, there is really no easy way for a game to reach you or for you to reach a game until maybe you go to a platform and you type hidden object cat games. So the anger is that I don't bloody well think that it should be like that. I think discovery should be easier and more democratic. But aspirationally, I think that if we we really lightly touched on generative AI before the call. I think there are tools and systems that we're going to be putting in place.
Talk about your startup, Ichiro. Let's just go.
You want to go?
Yeah.
You want to go? You want to go? I think generative AI has the potential to improve top of funnel awareness, because there are a lot of games that are not being talked about in that sort of top of funnel way that you could say, okay, John, what do you want? You like gladiatorial management RPGs. I'm going to go out and find 20 of them for you. I don't know if there are 20. You ask the AI. And I'm going to talk to you about them in a way that's compelling to you. Is it a podcast? Is it short clips? Is it, a listicle? And hypothetically, that then puts you into the funnel. And you can read articles, you can watch Let's Plays, which are, and have always been done by humans. And then you go down to, purchase on Steam or what have you.
Well, that's super working for comic books right now, as far as I can tell. Like we were pointing out earlier, I'm discovering things at the top of my funnel because they're being inserted into my media flow, right? I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube, whatever, pick your poison. And, those things are all competing with each other, right? I'm discovering books, I'm discovering music, I'm discovering games, and it's all interspersed. And one thing I've noticed is that the comic book people are way out ahead on this. There's always, YouTube shorts or whatever that are like explaining this particular storyline, right? It's not just, it's TV shows and comic books mostly I see. Maybe that's my version of it because the algorithm thinks that's what I want to see. I'm not a big comic book buyer, actually. But you're right. Now that you've pointed that out, I don't think I've seen that for games, right? In the same way that I've seen it for maybe books and comic books, right? It's like They are literally packaging up these delightful pieces of content that fit into my normal content stream, and I don't have to go and type a search code in. Am I feeding it back to you right? Am I understanding?
No, I mean, that's what, like, we loveeverygame.com. If you look at it, that's our open alpha. What we're really trying to do is leverage this new technology to give you bits and pieces of stuff that you might be interested in.
Cool.
Right? Because if you go shopping for, I don't know, let's say that you go shopping for ice cream, right? You don't go you don't go in and you're like, I see one flavor. It's the mint tamarind chocolate chip, and that's what I'm going to get. You go in and you try a few spoonfuls of things, and you're
like a Yelp of Steam. I like this, actually.
Yeah, cool. It's the whole purpose really is to sort of like pay respect to that, like the awareness. So, you go to a bazaar, farmer's market, you let all the wonderful scenes and, the wonderful fruits and vegetables and pies waft over you. And then something grabs your attention and then you go into it. Now, like that's, that going into it is the middle of funnel. The whole farmer's market, the Disneyland, the kind of like just looking at stuff is missing for games right now.
Video game farmer's market. I love it.
Yeah, I have a Trip Hawkins story. He's the founder of EA. So he was running Digital Chocolate around 2004 and 5. And we had this mobile game we were doing with the Wayans, which was based on something called The Dozens, which was a card game with Yo Mama insults. Anyway, we got the card company to print out on every deck how to get the mobile game through text messaging. And we got around the carrier decks. If you remember back then, you only sold mobile games through the carrier deck, and they'd only have like 30 games on there. So people know we're doing this, and Trip comes to me and says, don't do this, because if you open up the publishing of mobile games to everyone through this technique of pushing games through text messaging and all that, it's going to be swamped. And you know what? He was right. He was so right. The deck situation was actually curated games where you just had to do something decent, get to someone that's singular or whatever, and get your game on the deck. You were set. You could do, and there was a lot of mediocre crap that did pretty well because there was so little selection. And we were like in the first 500 apps on the Apple App Store, and then a different company by then. And we were also the first web game on the Apple iPhone. And, things were so much easier, and then it became absolute lunacy. So what I'm leading to is this. I think the independent developers need to find a different channel. Like I tried with the movie trivia game, which I still think was the right thing to do. Get a partner that has traffic and can benefit from having your game, share revenue with them, have them be the channel for the game, because then you have an audience. If there's 5 million people or 50 million people going to a movie review site, and they, God, I don't know what happened with Rotten Tomatoes, though. They had something called the Daily Tomato, and I can't get to anyone there. I mean, it's like, you killed your game. People like your game. I know why you killed it. They had issues with the developer. I got inside intel, but getting them to say anything to me is like unbelievably like, I'm sorry, I'm not making it clear. I'm going to give you half the revenue. Anyway, this is frustrating.
So
I had to show this link. You just type this in, screenshot it, and look at it later. But I was reminded of the Harder Drive video on YouTube when Ichiro a little while ago was mentioning some of the categories of games, because it's the video that taught me that Tetris is a survival horror inventory management game from the Soviet Union. So there's something in there about getting our categories right or something. But yeah, this video is hilarious for a lot of reasons other than that.
So with regards to providing like partnerships to market your game, one of the things that I'm planning to do for my next title, it's going to be a party game a la Mario Party. Nice. Is I plan to lean very heavily into Twitch API integration to encourage influencers to play the game, and influencers of all sizes, because there is a huge desire for live stream communities to connect and interact with the influencers that they watch, but there are very few games that support that as a primary mechanism. And so while that's not going to be necessary to play the game, I want to make sure that that's a feature that's available. And I think that's going to assist a lot with marketing.
Interesting idea, Renee, because we are on a lot of live stream platforms, but by far most of the audience that's watching live at this moment, and probably who will watch replays, are coming over on X.
On X.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I'm sorry.
Twitter. But there's clearly a gaming audience and gaming curious audience there, and figuring out new ways to connect with audiences that are at scale. I think that's what William was trying to kind of point to a moment ago. But Ichiro, could we talk about this discovery mechanism a little bit more? I love your idea of using generative AI. That technology was not around at a time way over a decade now that I created a company called Gamer DNA with my current founder of Beamable, co-founder of Beamable, Trapper. So we tried to create a platform that looked at behavior patterns, primarily on Xbox. So we'd see what achievements you earned, and based on the achievements, we would try to build a profile of you. And it actually is pretty useful. It really does work. You can use it to identify the ways you play games and the kind of games you're interested in based on achievement patterns, and then recommend. The problem we ran into, and maybe everything has changed and generative AI is a better interface, we just sort of discovered that like a lot of the playing community don't really go online in search of games.
Mhm.
They are because their friends tell them about a game, and amongst your friends there will be the friend who like tries a lot of things and says, hey, you got to try this. But like the average gamer seems like they're much more of a consumer than we might imagine. And it's different than music, for example, where like we queue up music channels and it taps into our tastes, and like there's basically infinity songs that exist as far as
Pandora and all that, yeah.
right. So that's a different problem than we were able to solve with games. Okay, but so that was, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, way back like that. What has changed other than generative AI? Do we have enough players now or something like work, or is generative AI the unlock on something?
So I think about I think about Gamer DNA a bunch actually, and what is it? Pandora's Music Genome Project, where there are a couple of sections to all this stuff, right? Why don't we hear about the Music Genome Project as much as we used to? Well, it is really, really difficult to tag by human hands and eyeballs all this stuff. So catalog categorization is not something that scales very easily, whereas with machine learning stuff and clustering and semantic segmentation of whatever, that is much easier. It's still expensive, but I think like the other, so half of the problem is, what is this game? What is it really about? Steam has about 440-ish tags, and they're good, but they really don't always get to the essence of what things, what games are all about. So, do I like Minecraft because I can explore, because it's open world, because I can build stuff, or because I can dig? And those are all very different things. Do I like, I'm going to say, do I like Veronica Mars, Netflix? Because it is a gritty story where teenage girls are just being murdered by old men. That's really not what I'm after. So I think we have the ability to segment games to sort of like surface what's more interesting about them and more compelling. And then the other half, as you pointed out, John, is like, why do people come and I'm going to go shop for a game today? That is what I'm going to do. Sometimes, yes, right? Like every Friday I have like my buddies and I go online and we play a multiplayer online co-op game. And so we will shop for games. But most of the time you find out about games by talking to friends, by going online, going to Reddit and skimming a bunch of stuff. And the real problem is there's no segmented entertainment where it's like, again, those hidden object cat games never get to me because they're just not surfaced in entertainment.
Okay. Renee, I think I heard you try to chime in there. What did you want to comment on that?
I don't remember.
Sorry, I bloviated for like 5 minutes straight.
No, it's okay.
Destroying Renee's
It's all you. It's all you.
What's the hardest thing about discovery from your standpoint, Renee, as a developer? Like, you kind of cracked the code on this personal presentation. You're using TikTok, but like, what is hard about it?
I mean,
Why
I think
so many game devs.
I think that where a lot of game devs are misled is they see where other devs are successful and they don't think about their audience difference.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Like, if I were to have marketed just on the channels that my friends have found successful, I would have not been successful, because it turns out my audience tends to be on TikTok and Instagram. Whereas like if I was creating a real-time strategy game a la StarCraft, like it would not go well on TikTok. I would have, like, I need a different platform. I need to be doing Reddit, maybe the Team Liquid forums, you know, someplace where I'm going to find audience that is interested in it. And so I feel that it's understandably naive for people to be like, oh, well, someone else went viral on this platform, so clearly that's the platform for me. And it's so important to get an understanding of your audience and what they care about, and then to be able to hammer into those points quickly, clearly, passionately, and really sort of get a vibe for what does well. And I change the way that I market based on platforms. Like when I launched my game, people are going to figure this out. I had my partner take a picture of me pointing at my computer, showing that I launched my game, and had him post it on Reddit and Imager, because I knew him saying, my fiance just launched her game after 9 years, was going to be much more effective on those platforms than me saying, I just launched my game after this long. Because that's where, you know, those communities connect more with like excitement around partner success instead of individual success. And it worked. It went viral, hit the front page on both.
I love what you just said about audiences, though, and it's the thing that I see in a lot of pitch decks for games that is not understood nearly well enough. I think it's natural for us as game developers to love the product. Like we really want to get into the product and talk about the product and the features and what makes the product amazing. And that's fine. You should love that. Like you're literally building it. So of course you love that. But when you're thinking in terms of like the broader set of business problems to be solved, and you're trying to connect with sources of capital to help fund it, for example, or just what we've just spent a whole bunch of time on, which is marketing a game and connecting with people, you are ultimately talking about audiences. So I always tell game studios, like, your product sounds really cool, but put the product on the back burner for a little bit here. Tell me why the audience is super interesting first. And also, what do they care about? Where are the gaps? Like for Renee, maybe it's like, maybe you've figured out how to connect with audiences on TikTok and form that connection with them. And it's forming a whole new channel for games, and the kind of people who are on TikTok play different kind of games and want a different kind of experience. Like just kind of making up and spitballing things here, but that I think is so critical to how you think about your game. Is start with audience, and then the product is what satisfies them, rather than, hey, I have a great product idea and then I'm going to hope to find the people that want to play that particular game.
That's tough for creators, though, right? I mean, like we are in it to create a game that is our vision, and boy, do we fall in love hard with that vision. And I agree with you, John. We need to do what I'm seeing. A lot of tech startups do this kind of like innately. It seems is they go for product market fit, they test a bunch, and they really question whether their game has their product has an audience in the first place. Maybe not everybody, but we're terrible at that. How do we get better?
You're going to invest a lot of your life in this thing.
Yeah, my development group said to me, let's do the web game first and see if it gets any traction. And that was the plan. And then we got all this interest from a movie review site, like I said, and so we went full hog into it. But I still think that was the right idea, to get like a version of the game out there with the same UI and the same look as a web game, just to see if it made any sense, just in this case, because it's a casual game. It's hard to do if you're trying to do a large multiplayer, battle arena, blah, blah, blah. You can't do that. But you could also, people have been doing things like they create like little trailers or, from the game, and see if that gets traction. They'll create a trailer before they even create the game to see if people care,
Yeah. I would say that with...
Go ahead, Renee.
What?
With Potions: A Curious Tale, when I designed it, I thought, hey, my main audience is going to be people who like Zelda games, because it's a Zelda-like, really top-down adventure, exploration, in-world puzzles, things like that. What I didn't realize, I was thinking my market was going to be men and women, but mostly men, from the ages of like 25 to 35. That tends to be like a solid Zelda audience. But it's about a witch, and just it being about a young witch meant that suddenly I was unlocking a younger female gamer group, right? Girls and women. And with cozy games getting big, that also sort of led people into like wanting to have crafting and exploration, but in a like slightly less combat centric way. But there were no crafting focused games that had much combat, like aside from like Stardew Valley's weird mine thing. And so with my better understanding of my audience as I was playtesting my game, I made sure that I was starting to tailor it towards that younger audience, so that, you know, it's E10 rated, or would be E10 rated. It has a huge focus on fairy tales and folklore. The palettes are relatively bright. You know, there's huge focus on the adorable cat companion, because my audience absolutely adores having a cat companion that like.
Isn't the entire internet optimized on delivering cat content to people?
Basically.
Like, don't you have an unfair advantage in that?
Basically. And so
Well, you know, it's like
I was still able to make the game I wanted to make, but I did make a bunch of changes to have it more appealing to the audience that stuck to it most.
All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour here. So you've spent yet another hour of your life, hopefully one that you find really valuable, learning about the game industry and the challenges, opportunities for game designers. For the closing, I'm going to ask Ichiro and Renee, I'd like both of you just to think, like, what's the quick set of wisdom or words of wisdom you'd pass on to someone who's just getting started down this path and wants to become a game developer? So hold that thought for a moment. Just going to give a quick preview of next week. So next week, I'm going to be live streaming live from GDC. We did live from South by Southwest with Tony Parisi, the inventor of VRML and GLTF and a lot of other technologies that are central to 3D rendering and VR. And he's an independent musician and Web3 guy. So we covered a lot of ground. That video blew up. We've got, we're pushing 100,000 views just on X alone at this point. So there's a lot of interest in what we're doing here, talking about the inside of the game industry. Next week, it'll be Dennis Didak, who is a storied game developer, probably best known for Legacy of Kain is one of the games he worked on. But he's gone over to the dark side, the double dark side, generative AI and Web3 brought into the same game. I don't know if it's nuclear fusion or fission, but it's some kind of nuclear reaction, and he's going for it. We're going to talk to him about his background and what he's building. And then Thursday, we're going to do a live one with someone as well, and it's a mystery guest. Why is it a mystery guest? Because it's a mystery to me still. I haven't signed up the person because GDC is really hard to schedule around. So if you think you'd like to be on the program, you're a studio head, a CTO, a designer of a game, someone working on the technology, we'd love to talk to you live from GDC. Okay, closing comments. I'll start with you, Renee. What do you want to pass on to game developers who are just starting out?
Game development is iterative, so it is most important that you get something out there quick. Could just be a rough prototype and get feedback on it. Watch people play with it, watch people interact with it, make changes to make it better. Going through that process is how you learn and how you make a fun game. So getting experience with it is super important, more so than spending 10 years on one title.
Thank you, Renee. Ichiro, what do you got?
Let me piggyback on what Renee's saying. And how do you show it to people? Well, get to know as many people as you can. The best things that have happened to me in my career have been because I've networked, because I've gone to local events, because I've gone to GDC, and I've talked about my stuff before I was ready. And the game industry largely has been lovely, and people want you to succeed. So they will beat the crud out of your game, but they will do it in a loving fashion.
Yeah, and people don't really steal ideas. People steal completed games, like a game that's working and that they want to just clone. That happens
all the time.
Yeah. But they don't really they don't steal ideas. I would say, talk about your idea and refine them and develop them. And I love everything that was just said about iteration and communication and showing it to people. Game development is a craft. It's super hard to do in isolation. So that's one of the many keys to success you'll need in this industry. Thanks, everybody, for watching. It's been a great program. I want to thank all my guests. Paul, thanks for being here again. Oscar, Thank you for your production assistance. Renee, Ichiro, thanks so much for signing up, being on as guests. Hope to have you back in any future program. And William, thanks for jumping in the chat.
Thank you.
Just like you guys
Awesome.
do
Awesome.
every week.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Until
All
next
right.
time, we'll see you at GDC.